I think one of the things I'll say a little surprising that I enjoyed was people praying over you in restaurants and grocery stores.
Welcome to the Business Growth Masterclass, where business growth is made simple. I'm your host, Albert Gillespie.
And I'm your co-host, Kellen Ketchersid. Join us as we bring you stories from business leaders so you can learn from their wins, their losses, and everything in between.
Today's guest is the Texas State Representative representing District 84 for the great state of Texas. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Carl Tepper.
Thanks, Albert. Good to be here.
I am excited to have you. We've got to know each other and run into each other in the business world over the last handful of years. And I've been excited to get you in here and hear a little more of your story. It's been a minute since I've taken high school government. So why don't you give me and maybe some of our listeners a quick 30 seconds. What does a Texas state representative do?
You know, you get down to the levels of government. I mean, there's the federal government and Congress and the presidency, and that's what everyone likes to talk about. The next level down is each state has their own legislature. And so I am a member of the Texas legislature. The House side, there's a House, Senate, bicameral legislature, and then the executive is the governor. And by the way, there's one state, okay, you get a Snickers bar if you get this one state that has a unicameral legislature. They don't have a House and Senate. Do you know what state that is?
Rhode Island.
Wrong, Nebraska. So it's good. I don't have a Snickers bar for you anyway. And then you have your local government. You have the county, which is a direct offshoot of the state, and the cities, which are formed with permission by the state. And they're chartered. So, and then there's mud districts and hospital districts and all kinds of different taxing districts and different types of districts and government levels that you elect your representatives there. So I'm elected by about 200,000 people. There's only 150 representatives. There's 31 senators. There's 31 senators because there's 31 proverbs. There's 150 House members because there's 150 Psalms. And that's how it was formed from the beginning. People want to expand the legislature a bit because it's the state's growing so much that we all have so many people that we represent. But that tradition is a little unbreakable, I think. And so we're going to keep it the way it is. And there's another executive who has an immense amount of power. That's the lieutenant governor. He's elected directly from the people and not the fellow senators. And so he has an amazing amount of authority in moving legislation through because there is just 31 senators. Each one of them represents just over 1 million people themselves. They really rival the powers of a member of Congress in a lot of ways. And also it should be mentioned that, of course, in Lubbock, we have the Speaker of the House that's not elected directly. That causes a lot of consternation every time we elect a speaker. But Representative and Speaker Dustin Burrows is my neighboring district, and we both share Lubbock County. And he's got I think he's got 12 counties. I'm the only guy out here with just one county. I'm completely within Lubbock County.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've got the heart of the city of Lubbock and Texas Tech and that sort of thing. So that's how my population kind of lays out.
Okay. What in the world inspired you as a citizen, the perspective of politicians and what that means for your family and navigating that just seems like such a mess. What inspired you to get involved in public service?
It's in your DNA or it's not. I grew up fascinated with Ronald Reagan, absolutely fascinated by him. When I was in high school, I mean, we had the junior high school, we had Jimmy Carter was the president. We had hostages in Iran. We had oil embargoes. You could only fill up your car every odd day, depending on the last digit of your license plate, odds and evens. We had the Soviets breathing down our necks, the hostages in Iran. We had stagflation, high unemployment and high inflation. They had to make up the term for the time. And then a guy named Ronald Reagan came in, and those Iranians couldn't give those hostages back fast enough. I mean, the second he was sworn in, the hostages landed in the United States. The embassy hostages, Iranian embassy hostages, you younger guys might want to look that up, but it was a big deal when I was a kid. And very quickly, the economy turned around. And I'm proud to say I joined the Air Force in my senior year of high school. I lived in England for 2 years under Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who were a heck of a team, who together took down the Soviet Union, which was an evil empire, socialist empire, by the way, communist socialist. And my dog is named Margaret Thatcher. As a matter of fact, I just dropped her off at Mom's house. So that's what inspired me. And I've always had an interest in the process. Of course, Congress, and then, moving to Texas. The Texas legislature has an immense amount of power. 30 million people in Texas. Everything the legislature does and the governor and the state of Texas does affects the entire American Southwest, if not the entire country. The surplus to our budget 2 years ago was bigger than the budgets of probably half of the states, just our surplus.
Yeah.
So it's been just a really great ride, and as fascinating as I thought it was going to be. And by the way, my major at Texas Tech was political science. If you're a political science major, change. Get yourself a finance degree or accounting degree or something, or welcome to real estate. If you get your poli-sci degree and history minor. But it worked out for me. But I will tell you, it's been absolutely fascinating. It's in my DNA, and that's how I chose to serve. There's also another character. It always seems to come back to people. Rush Limbaugh, another the greatest broadcaster ever, probably. Was a huge inspiration. I worked at a bicycle shop through Texas Tech on 34th Street. A lot of you will remember South Plains Schwinn or South Plains Cycles years ago. I worked with Don Fullwood there for years. He's passed, unfortunately, but we would listen to Rush Limbaugh all day in that bicycle shop, repairing bicycles, and assembling bicycles and what have you. And that motivated me to keep going, and I've always been involved. Lived in Austin for 12 years, and I got to see the other side of the beast. Very liberal town.
Yeah.
A little wacky, very weird. They're proud of it. And got to see how hard it was to come up against government. I was a commercial property manager by training. I used to manage the high rises downtown Westlake and Round Rock and all that. And up and down Mopac. And I remember we were talking about this before we started the show, how tough the building officials can be, whether it be the fire marshals, the building codes guys, even the people checking to see if you're using too much water or not, or if your toilets are high flow, low flow, or what have you. So
there's a Seinfeld episode for that.
Yeah, there is. Getting your shower and getting all this shampoo out of your hair. So, well, you're a little young to remember that. But I've gotten a front row seat into how government operates. Usually in my way. I'm discovering that in the city of Lubbock, it's easier to put up a head shop, a THC cannabis shop than it is to put in a church. So I'm still fighting the fight, and, between property taxes, skyrocketing property insurance rates, and all the different codes, there's always some dragging a sleigh.
Okay. There's a lot there. What I'm getting from this is it's been something you've followed. It's kind of been something passionate. You've listened to talk radio. It reminds me of a lot of my friends that listen to various political talk podcasts and things like that we've listened to for years and years. But you had the guts to throw your hat in the ring and pursue that. We've touched a little bit on your day job, your business career, and you've even alluded to some of that of the pain points that you've felt, and maybe you can speak a little more to that. Maybe you have a story to tell that you could share. But how has your business career informed how you operate as a elected official?
To try to bake it down to the smallest grain, it's less government's better, no matter how you break it down. There might be things that are wrong in the world. There might be injustices. You want it to be fixed, but government's not going to fix it for you. I'm looking at code enforcement. My house, I've got illegal dumps all over the place. I ride horses out in the county. I see people dumping. I see mattresses. I see houses out of code, meaning that it's pretty inconsiderate to their neighbors that you'd have a stack yard in your backyard, or broken down, bombed out cars laying there that everyone can see.
Mm-hmm.
And even though these properties are in the city, no one ever bothers to come by. Even though complaints are made, no one ever bothers to come by and say, we need to get that fixed, which is a basic core service of a city. If you want to have bombed out cars, move to the county. And I promise you there's plenty of that out there. But a lot of us move into the city with an expectation of certain order, and that's not provided by the city. And I can take you all over town right now and show you examples. As a matter of fact, I complained to a previous mayor about a car I'd always pass. It was on 58th Street, and it was wrapped in plastic on somebody's driveway. I mean, the neighbors are trying to keep their little houses, very cute houses, trying to keep them neat and clean. You'd always have somebody with a bombed out car wrapped in plastic for years. And I finally made a stink about it. And I don't even live over there, but I just thought it was the most onerous, inconsiderate thing I'd ever seen. They finally did something about it. But why did it take me, someone who doesn't even live in that neighborhood, to raise a fuss about it and get it fixed? So my point being, again, to swing back to what our point is, which is most likely government isn't going to be able to fix it for you. You need a society that I would argue is considerate. I'm a faith-based guy. I believe that absolutes matter. That's what you get from Christianity, Judaism. And you'll have more luck raising children with manners and to be considerate than you will paying government a lot of money to fix problems that they're never going to fix anyway.
Okay.
And you wanted an example.
Yeah, go ahead.
So besides the wrapped car, as a commercial property manager, every new space, office buildings are made to move the offices around. You make one larger, you add 2 offices, what have you. In the larger buildings, you have fire sprinklers. Depending on the inspector that day, the inspector will come in and say, well, that sprinkler needs to be moved. It needs to be at least, 5 feet from that door. Well, it's only 3 feet from the door or something, or 3 feet further from the door. And so these guys, throw around a lot of authority without any consideration for the cost or what's going on. There's another example where fire sprinklers were being required. I don't do apartments, but I have a friend who had some apartment buildings that the sprinklers were being required on the balconies of the apartments. Well, folks, it freezes here in West Texas. I mean, It really freezes, 0 and below. And you can't have fire sprinklers on a balcony, So this was a battle royale at City Hall about having sprinklers on a balcony, something that should have been easily fixed, or an oops moment in the code or something that took a real battle to get rectified.
Okay. And maybe this is a good point to lean into that. I think there's a lot of politicians and legislators that are making laws. They're making code. They're making rules that the public has to follow, that a lot of times they don't understand the full implications of what they're requiring. Like the example of, putting a fire suppression system outside. What do you think is the role for the business owner? I want to get more into your story of like why you decided to enter this and what the onset of that looked like. But I think setting the stage for that, what's the role of the business owner? How do they get involved in that? How do they avoid the boneheaded things that the People's Republic of Austin decide to do that don't make business sense, that don't make common sense? What advice would you give them?
There's a few things here. One is defend yourself and be vocal. Every night on the news, you'll see groups out there screaming and yelling, and usually they're on the other side. And the Republican side or the conservative side find themselves busy running a business, raising a family. They don't have time for activism.
Yes.
But I need you to be an activist. And a lot of the business community have formed associations. I'm very for the associations. I don't always agree with them. I have had my ins and outs with the realtors, for example. But nevertheless, when there's an issue in your specific industry, there was an issue with a bill about spas, medical spas, and every medical spa would have to have a license to shoot EMS technician. I forgot what it was now, but it was something that was going to be really tough to comply with. And the person writing the bill wasn't in that industry, but had gained some information. And when I got complaints about the bill from different spa owners in the city of Lubbock or constituents in the city of Lubbock, including one client of mine, I'm not familiar with those issues at times and what it takes to, have this sort of heightened medical credential to be in the spa all the time. It would have been helpful had they had an association to not just bring me the problem, but also to bring me the solution. How can we reword this legislation that will be acceptable to the author of the legislation and will actually fix the problem that is immediate that these guys are looking at? I have also learned I avoid bills. I tend to avoid bills of healthcare. That's not my expertise. And the criminal justice system. I had one bill that was car burglaries and break-ins would be a felony. They already are after the third or second or something like that. But, I got a real lesson in how little I knew about the criminal, process and legal process and habeas corpus and all of that, that for now on, when I see bills like that I haven't interested, I'd rather pass it off to someone who has an expertise in that legal area. And, I can be a joint author. There's only 4 joint authors. There's an author and then 4 joint authors to a bill. It's a very heightened part of the bill, which means you were an active part of that bill. Mm-hmm. And then you can be co-author. Anybody can be a co-author. So I'll usually handle those types of ideas that way. Now, if I see an injustice that has to do with the legal system, I'll bring it to an attorney. My desk mate is an incredible attorney, David Spiller, out of Jacksboro, and I'll give it to them. Or the concept to them to go ahead and write it and rewrite it and try to do something with it.
Okay, let me paraphrase some. There was a lot of good stuff there. Okay, and so you have what you would consider your wheelhouse, things you're familiar with, from your professional life. You are in commercial real estate, and you help represent a lot of commercial clients and leasing and buying and selling, and things that aren't in your wheelhouse. You have a team of people that you trust, and kind of one of the go-tos, it's just kind of fish in a barrel, are these professional associations. Whether it's the Lubbock Apartment Association, the Chamber of Commerce, the whatever. It is a association of industry experts that a lot of them have this political action committee that is devoted to keeping an eye out for potential legislation that's being drafted, that's being discussed, and they're having conversations. They're getting their peers together and reviewing what the draft legislation says, talking through how does that impact our industry, what are the blind spots, what are the red flags, what is going to hurt business, what is going to make things more difficult. And then they have, connections, they have relationships with different legislators like you that they can call and say, hey, here's something to watch out for, and this is why. Here's some different language we would like to see, and make your job that much easier.
And thanks. You explained that very, very well. And the relationship matters. It also matters that you don't have to. The associations spend a lot of time. They want to, rub elbows and go out, but if that doesn't matter to me as much as that association bringing me a bill. I might have never seen the guy before ever, or his gang that walks in my office. But if it's an interesting bill, they wanted me to carry it or consider it. That's good enough for me. And if it's important to them, if I'm a good office holder, if it's important to them, it's important to me.
Yeah, I think of that relationship building as like the general contractor that you've met, and you've played golf with him, you've had lunch with him a couple times, maybe a coffee, and then you have a fire. and you have this emergency, and you're like, man, who's someone I trust? Who's someone who I know has good character that I think they'll do a good job? And that's when you call them. And I think that's a lot of these professional associations that, of course, you go to city council or whatever, there's the crazy person typically on the left who's taking the mic and screaming about something that's completely irrelevant. But if you can be a part of that group that has built credibility and built a relationship of trust, that you know that they're a common sense person who knows what they're doing and they're a professional, that goes a lot further. Okay. I want to get into you making the decision to run. I'm sure that was an exciting process. Can you talk me through some of the campaigning? What were maybe some surprising things that you wish the public knew? Or maybe, if that's good, if that's bad, whatever, but tell me a story through that and, share what you think the public needs to know.
I was the Republican Party chairman here. I was president of the Chairman's Association, and got to operate statewide at one point. And then I was on the Trump campaign. I was the first Republican Party of Texas official to endorse Donald Trump, and it was lonely for a while. It was very big Ted Cruz country, but I think it worked out. And I got out of being the party chairman out of the Trump campaign, did not go to the administration. You have to kind of move up there and look for a job. I wasn't willing to do that. And so I was happily retired, minding my own business. That was working out really well, by the way. And John Furlow, who was an old friend of mine, announced it was a surprise to us that he wasn't going to run for re-election. And I got a couple of phone calls if I would consider it. And it didn't take a lot of considering for me. I'm not going to say, I could give you the cliche. We prayed about it, and we did, but it seems to be a cliche now. We did think about it. We did discuss it. But in the end, again, I'm fascinated with the process, wanted to do it. We knew we had the capability to do it, and jumped in. And Ken Hance, Chancellor Congressman Hance, always says, everyone should run for office just once. You don't have to win. You don't even have to have a chance. But the experience is like nothing else. You're pulled 1,000 directions. You've got to be consistent with your messaging. You might highlight some issues to one group or, highlight some issues to another. But you don't want to be Mr. Changeable or a chameleon.
Yeah.
You want to be consistent. I would argue the voters will know. They can kind of sniff out disingenuous. And so you have to be genuine with them. I had done quite a bit of talk radio. Again, I was the party chairman, had been around town. And so we had really good name recognition. And walking blocks is, I think, the most fun of anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That sounds miserable.
A little tough to get started. But like I said, I was on the radio. People would want to talk about property taxes mostly.
Yeah.
And every household would take me 20 to 30 minutes, of just on the front porch, talking about these issues.
Okay, hang on.
Lubbock's just a great town. Yeah.
Hang on. So you're literally walking blocks, having one-on-one conversations with households.
Yeah.
What an insane thing.
Well, and you're not just randomly going up to houses. You're going up to houses. And my race was the Republican primary. David Glasheen did a great job on the other side. We really went at each other. But you go house to house of houses that are the most likely primary voters, Republican primary voters. So these are folks who consistently vote Republican primaries. And so they're likely going to agree with you on the issues. But now they want to know how deep you can get into the issue with them and if you have any ideas to solve the issue. And so Lubbock was a really fun town to do that. People like to chat. They're bored. It's a Saturday. Now, sometimes you do get, if a Texas Tech basketball game is on or something, they don't want to talk to you, like, thanks a lot. See you later. And you give them your materials. But more often than not, people want to visit for a while.
Okay. Well, what was something surprising in that campaigning process that was surprising, but you enjoyed? Didn't think you would.
I think one of the things I'll say a little surprising that I enjoyed was people praying over you in restaurants and grocery stores. Like everywhere I went, the attacks were coming left and right. Carl mocked veterans, suicide, homeless, things like that. And people knew that just wasn't true. And it was very satisfying for people in the Honeyham restaurant to say, I know you, I've seen you on TV. I can't believe what they're saying. And do you mind if I pray over you? Like everywhere we went. And boy, you feel the power, you feel the Spirit moving through. It got to the point where, like I said, it took 2 hours to get through a block and a half. And I just realized we were going to win this, the feedback was so positive. The voters were so great that, I think maybe that was the most surprising thing, was just how much fun I actually had with it.
Man, just hearing you talk through that, I'm thinking, the being consistent. Like, I'm sure there was a lot of self-reflection that went into that, of like, what do I really think about this, that, and the other specific issues? I'm imagining there's a ton of growth and just thick skin that you grow, having to deal with the mudslinging and navigating that for your family. And still, Lubbock's a big small town. You still, everywhere you go, there's people, and just being able to navigate that with authenticity, maturity, and wisdom. With wisdom, I'm imagining you grew a lot in that process.
Boy, I'll give you one story. There was a couple, I knocked on the door to a married couple, and the Ring camera answered, and they said, "We're not home. We're 5 blocks away going to an event, but we're heading right back to the house. We want to talk to you." And I'm like, oof. And so they arrived. They said, someone else was here from the other campaign yesterday, and they said, "You're just running to lower your commercial property tax rates." And I'm like, well, that's part of it. Absolutely. I owned it, and I said, yeah, your home taxes are too high, and my home taxes are too high, and my commercial properties are too high, and commercial properties don't have any cap on their appraisals or anything. So I was able to have some fun with that one and discuss with them, like, yes, I do have some expertise in property taxes, commercial, rental, residential, homestead, and I want to solve it. And so those are the challenging households or calls that you might get on the radio that I really enjoy. I'm not looking for people who just agree, but if you're set in your opinion, I'm not going to change it. A lot of the Democrats in town are just set on their opinion, but if we can have a dialogue, sometimes I can maybe disarm you and neutralize you. If the politician or my opinions are thoughtful enough or clear enough.
Okay. The campaign, the runoff, it wound up being you and Glasheen, kind of, and Kate Wilcox there for a little bit, but it wound up being you and Glasheen, kind of running neck and neck, and now he's a city councilman. I
think he's doing a great job on city council.
Yeah, and so how do you Lubbock is a big small town. How do you navigate that, where your opponent, that you back and forth, there's plenty of he said, she said. How do you navigate that well? And I'm thinking of business owners too. Like, how do you navigate that when maybe your competitor isn't saying something that you agree with, or maybe isn't saying something that's completely factual about you, but you still have to do business with them? How do you navigate that?
I think you just get over it after a while. There are some folks around town who I work with, and then, on the car back home, I think that guy was for Kate Wilcox during a campaign or what have you. Who knows? I can hardly even remember. You've got to let it go and move on, and, form new relationships or reform old friendships that were maybe splintered during that time. And, it sounds good to say that, but I really mean it. You just have to move on and just do your thing, and you still have to win them over.
Okay. Kill them with kindness.
I'm not always that kind. I'm not known for that, but I think they appreciate directness as well.
Yeah.
People are tired of the flowery. That's why Donald Trump is so popular right now. They're so sick of being told the cliches. They wanted the direct answers.
Yeah.
From somebody who didn't have the flowery language. They just wanted a direct answer, and they got it with Donald Trump. Some hate him for it, but I think the great majority, this last election a year ago, he won because of it again.
Yeah, I think they're kind of the classic politician who is polished and can answer any question ambiguously, that you really never know where someone stands. I think people have grown tired of that, and they want just authenticity. They want truth. They want clarity, and I think that's all over the board. You've talked a lot about wanting to make a difference, and thinking big government is a bad thing. The government can't solve all of your problems. I feel and think all of those same things, and it feels idealistic. And maybe you can speak to this. You get into office and you get to do the job. Are there any early lessons or early experiences where you saw you could actually make a change?
I passed a few bills, and I sat on appropriations as well.
Appropriations, what does that mean?
That means that's the committee that we spend the money. Ways and Means is the committee that studies taxes and how are we going to tax you to get your money. And appropriations is the other committee that spends the money. So Texas Tech is going to get this many billion this year. It's not that much, by the way. The public schools are going to get this much. We're going to give this block of money to the public education committee to spend, and they're going to have to parse out how it gets spent. So I felt very strongly that I made some differences on appropriations. And how the spending was spent, whether it be $1 billion for a trust for the state parks, and shoring up retirement accounts for teachers and public employees. That's the bill number one, HB1, that isn't sexy. It doesn't have my name. It has my name on it in the committee, but I'm not the one who filed it. Dr. Greg Bonin filed it, Chairman Bonin. But you feel like you make a lot of difference there. One of the bills I made a difference. I feel I was stationed at Reese Air Force Base. That's how I ended up here in Lubbock. Reese Air Force Base is now under the charge of Texas Tech. That's a long story, but I'm very proud of that bill. I'm very proud that Texas Tech is going to be doing some really amazing research out there to protect America's fleet. We've also done some bills. We had some downtown interests for the city, the Civic Center. And we were able to redirect, instead of sending our taxes to Austin, we're able to redirect them back for the remodel of the Civic Center and the expansion of the Civic Center. I worked on some bills. I've been working on property tax caps since I got there. This was just my sophomore session. So far, it's been a big failure. I have letters to George W. Bush about increasing property tax appraisals and taxes. I was a junior property manager when George W. Bush was governor. I'm giving my age away. But I have letters to him about the problems we have with the triple net leases and the operating expenses of small businesses, and how the tax process and rules affect them. And I've wanted to cap the appraisals for a long time. People kept saying, Carl, you can't do that. You have to stop promising that on the campaign trail. Well, Speaker Phelan filed a cap for commercial property along with a lower cap for residential homesteads. So it could be done. And it was rejected by the Senate. We tried it. We keep trying it. I filed that bill every chance I've had, 2.5% increases. You already capped your homestead, by the way, at 10% a year. That used to not matter very much in Lubbock. It does now. People are hitting that 10% every year. It's 30% over 3 years.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's talk shop on that. That sounds like fun. when we're talking about caps, you're talking about valuation caps that you're trying to put something in place where, the rate, that could go up every year, and that dramatically affects what your property tax bill is. And on the other side, you have the valuation or the appraisal. What that's worth also affects what you pay. Steel manning this, it could be argued that, especially in commercial real estate, if you're capping that, you are going to distort the market where transactions don't happen. So in an example, if there's a cap, say it's 5% cap each year, whenever the property sells, all bets are off. Now that's incorrect. That's reset.
So,
okay. Yeah. Come on.
So what happens is your property is worth whatever it's worth. If you bought a building for $1 million, it's worth $1 million. If you sell it 2 weeks later for $2 million, it's $2 million. The property tax cap is just an artificial cap on what your valuation could be for the calculation of your taxes that year.
Okay, so walk me through that example. So I bought a building for $1 million. My appraisal is $1 million. Then I sell it next year for $2 million. Where are you saying that it only goes up 5%, and so it's $1,050,000 for that guy?
So okay. My bill, the cap follows the property, and this has been a lot of consternation with the realtors groups.
Okay,
where we're going to make it so that nobody's going to want to buy that building because suddenly, on top of everything else and increasing interest rates and everything, the property taxes are going to skyrocket because they're going to reset at the $5 million that it's actually worth instead of the $1,010,000 or what have you. In my bill, the caps would follow the property. So whether you bought it for $5 million a year later, or maybe it's worth $10 million, you're only being taxed on $1.5 million because over 5 years at 10%. So that's how mine would work to kind of belay the issues of skyrocketing property taxes with a new owner.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's a focus. I would, while you're here, I know you're a commercial real estate guy, but I'm going to belabor the point. Commercial property taxes are growing at a much greater rate than your residential taxes. And, a lot of it, which,
and so we can build this for the audience a little bit.
Sure.
Your house has an exemption. So that's your homestead. Your house is your homestead. So you should. And by the way, if you're out there and you don't know what I'm talking about, go talk to a realtor or your bank or someone about making sure you get that homestead exemption. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Because we just raised it. Let me see. Seniors are $200,000. I think residential. I think we just did $140,000, which means a lot of houses aren't going to get any, school property taxes because their houses are just, $130,000 value. So we've done a lot of that exemption work to help you with your home. I would argue that business, small business, large business, I don't care. Business is how we feed ourselves, unless you work for the government, and government feeds off of business. So we should give some consideration for stability. If business is looking for anything, one of the things it's looking for is low operating expenses, low payroll, low taxes. Okay, or at least stabilize taxes. What I'm simply looking to do is stabilize the system. So instead of having a 50% reappraisal the next year, I've had properties, I've had people report to me that their properties down in New Braunfels and San Antonio area, apartment buildings are increasing 300% in 1 year. That hurts the owners who have maybe some longer term leases or over a year, still hurt them because they can't recoup that because they're going to raise the rents on the tenants. Okay. That happens with apartments. That happens with commercial property or Starbucks or whoever. They're going to have skyrocketing operating expenses by those property taxes. So the only thing I'm looking to do, and I never promised anyone I would lower their property taxes, and we have here and there because we brought down some of the school rate. That's a whole other story. But what I'm simply trying to do is stabilize the property tax system so that you can budget for the future. And it's probably going to rise. Okay. And it's going to be a slower rise rather than, they call it property tax appraisal creep. I call it whiplash, is what's been going on in the commercial world. And it's one of the things we can make where we can make Texas even more attractive than it already is for business.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that's the story for the commercial. It's the big bad landlord, of course. It's not as many. The residential, that's a lot of votes. That's a lot of people who can get a public official elected. But the commercial properties have been growing at an exponential rate, different compared to the residential, and really they've borne a lot of the yoke of the state economy.
The cost of schools, the cost of roads, the cost of the justice system. And folks, I'm here to tell you, it's not just the property taxes. We've got skyrocketing insurance rates. I mean, absolutely incredibly skyrocketing. For a while there, we had skyrocketing utility rates, and so these are not, I know you're thinking of the landlord that's driving the Ferrari in New York and takes a helicopter from one landing pad to the next. That's not, by and large, the rest of us.
Yes.
We are trying to make ends meet. We value our tenants I value my tenants on 34th Street very much. And I'm always trying to massage it and work it out with them so that they have very steady increases in their rents and their operating expenses. But it's been hard to keep up with because we've got skyrocketing everything. And I think we deserve a little consideration too.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the two pain points, property taxes continuing to grow in a disproportionate rate compared to residential, and insurance, in the last 5 years, insurance has tripled.
Folks, we know you're seeing it in your house. You should see what it's doing to commercial property tax, retail centers, office buildings, industrial warehouses, and things like that.
Yeah, and that's one of those. How do you? And I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on this, and plead the fifth if you need to. What is good legislation to navigate that? I think of like a Florida, where there's no insurance carriers. And so if the government steps in and subsidizes that, well, what do you get? You get more construction in this area that is more prone to events. And so, if prior to that, there's $10 billion worth of real estate that is exposed to hurricanes, and then you incentivize that, and all of a sudden you build $20 billion. Well, now that loss is is double the rate or double the amount. And so I'm like, what is a good solution to that? Have you heard anything?
Well, and you notice I haven't said anything about fixing property insurance because I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
And I've asked around some of the experts. They don't have an answer. Texas has hailstorms. We have some hurricanes and we have some tornadoes here and there. But the biggest damage, we had those floods last summer, very tragic. The biggest thing we have are hailstorms. It's just killing us. Roofs, HVAC systems are on the roof, getting destroyed. Obviously, your fleet of cars. Now, most of us, our fleet of cars are one truck, but it's skyrocketing our insurance rates, and we're not sure what to do with it. Except, please, Lord, give us a few peaceful years of fewer tornadoes and hailstorms and wind damage on the coast.
Yeah, I heard something earlier this week. Hurricane season officially ended yesterday. And this was like the first time in 10 or 11 years that the U.S. didn't have a major hurricane make landfall. And I'm like, all right, that's just to be completely transparent, we're seeing reduction in insurance premiums right now.
Are we?
We are.
Okay, you make me feel better.
we are getting some relief, but in the grand scheme of things, compared to 5 years ago, it's still, well over 2.5 times what it was 5 years ago. But
that's exactly right, 2.5 times.
But we're definitely getting some relief, some more competition in the market, which drives down prices. And so,
okay, keep it up, Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
No kidding. Okay, so we've talked about you're on the appropriations committee. How many committees is a state rep on, or how many are you on?
They're usually on 8. They're usually on 2. Most representatives are on 2. I'm on 8.
8? What is wrong with you?
The speaker gave me everything I wanted, and I wanted it. I'm really thankful for it. I had appropriations Article 3, which is education. I was on the calendars committee. That's the filter that brings the bills to the floor. If it gets through calendars, out of all these thousands of bills that were filed, I think we're cresting towards 10,000 bills. Which few actually get to the floor? The calendars committee does that. I was on intergovernmental affairs. I was on county and regional Affairs Subcommittee. I chaired Federal and State Subcommittee, and I was on redistricting. I think I'm missing one. There were two redistricting committees. One I was on, and then one I was appointed on for the big redistricting that happened over the summer.
Yeah. Okay. Great segue. So of those 8, which of those is your favorite?
I wish you had asked me that.
Which ones are you most uniquely gifted for?
I really enjoyed appropriations. I just love it. I understand it. I get it. Appropriations Article 3, love it, get it. I get to look out for Texas Tech there. It's very important. That's our economy here. Intergovernmental affairs. I love cities and pothole issues and battles with the police department and the firefighters unions and settling those things. So I loved intergovernmental affairs. I'm so thankful. I thank you, Dustin, for putting me on that too. It was a lot of fun. And then, of course, redistricting ended up being just a fireworks show. That was over the summer. I mean, we traveled the state at hearings, Arlington and Houston, and a couple of times in Austin, and that was a brawler.
Okay, explain that in 30 seconds. What was the issue, and what did you guys do to solve it?
A lot of you watch the news. Donald Trump inspired the governor to redistrict. He felt like we could squeeze some more Republican seats out of Texas, 5 to be exact. I think we can get to 7, but we did get to 5. And so we moved around some of the lines. You're allowed to move the lines based on partisanship, Republican or Democrat. And so we actually cleaned up some of the lines and got more Republican seats. They're not quite as gerrymandered as they were before. They're actually a little straighter. And lo and behold, I think we're going to get 5 more seats. Now, it doesn't steal votes from anybody. You still get the vote for a congressman. And by the way, about 3 of those Republican seats are barely leaning Republican now. So we better have a good candidate in there, because a really sharp Democrat could conceivably, moderate, probably normal Democrat, if you can find one anymore, could conceivably win one of those seats anyway. So, but I think we have squeezed out 5 more seats. Now, of course, California is responding, and I think some of the other states. So we'll see if that's a net gain for the U.S. House of Representatives.
Okay. And the best interpretation of that is, prior to this redistricting, we had a lot of these district lines that, didn't look like a county. It didn't look like this square, perfect thing. It was these very obscure shapes that a lot of time,
it's like Jackson Pollock wrote the map or something.
Yeah. And really, in the worst case scenario, could be engineering these districts to gather the most, Democratic areas to get a Democratic seat, or could be, drawn to get the most Republican version of that. And so what do you feel, is there any objective, evidence that how they were redrawn is a little more uniform and a little more, fair to the average voter?
Well, any passive look at the map, you'll see they're a little more square, a little straighter. But our objective was to be blatantly partisan, and we were, and we got 5 more Republican seats. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
We went straight for it, and frankly, we're looking at some decisions this month where we might try to go for 2 more next summer.
I mean, that is one part of our community and world that operates different. If the opportunity is there, might as well go after it.
0-sum game. Folks, it's a nasty partisan world out there right now, and we're just catching up in Texas.
Okay, I want to lean into that a little bit. It feels loud. It feels very, very tumultuous.
I think you hit it with loud. It's very loud.
Yeah, and maybe that's because of social media and just how visible every little issue, every little thing is, as a state rep, how do you navigate that? How do you reach across the aisle and get things done? How do you do that?
We're criticized for this, but I'm going to put it out there. The speaker and the previous speakers, I can name 3 or 4 right now, worked very hard into keeping it. It's partisan, but bipartisan when public safety or children or that sort of thing comes into it, basic American values. And so as a Republican, I'm in the majority party. I mean, if I don't get a bill through, that's mostly my own fault. It's not an issue of partisanship there. What I do admire, maybe that's the wrong word. No, I admire them, are the Democrats who get bills through. I have 2 desk mates behind me, Claudia Ordaz, Eddie Morales. She's from El Paso. He's got part of El Paso into Eagle Pass, and they pass bills, mostly bills that are the interest of their district. They pass bills that have to do with University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, or El Paso, or the police force in El Paso, you name it. I find it very interesting and how talented they are being able to get those bills through. And to get help from their Republican colleagues in the committee chairman to get their bills heard, and from the calendars committee, and from the speaker to get their bills heard. I think it's an amazing job. As a matter of fact, I think Claudia just won a big award for being the most effective Democrat in getting bills through. So that's really a question for the speaker. The speaker's got to balance all these, 150 cats, different personalities, partisan cats, and he's got to somehow get the business done. The Democrats are far from a majority, but they, as you saw this summer, they can sure shut it down. They can leave the state. They can waste time. Time is the most valuable thing we have in a session. We've only got 140 days. And so if they can stall a bill by not making quorum or debating a bill ad nauseum into the wee hours of the morning, that happens. Sometimes we don't leave there till 4 a.m, 2 a.m. And which means a lot of other bills are backed up that might be of importance to me personally for Lubbock or for the state and the governor's office. And so, and the governor's got a whole few dozen bills he wants to get through. He doesn't get every one of his, so we're losing time when they use those stalling tactics to get to every bill that they have some interest in, the governor, lieutenant governor, and every other, important person hanging around the building. So it's the speaker's job to kind of grease the wheels here and there to allow these Democrats to pass a bill that's normally very effective for their particular district. And that's how it's done.
Great. Well said. And a good example, I think, especially keyboard warriors and anybody on social media that, man, this guy or that guy, he's bringing these guys on the committee to, giving Democratic seats or, giving them a foothold to take over something and pass these left-leaning bills. And part of the story that doesn't get told is you have to keep moving forward in order to get to the 10,000 bills. And the great thing about Texas is the legislative session is every other year. And so when you guys are in session, it's time to get down to business. It's time to, move things forward and cut and revise and come up with practical solutions. And sometimes that means that you have to negotiate. You have to.
Yeah. If you want us to get to the good Republican red meat, let us get through some of the gristle.
Yeah.
And we'll get there. So it's a legislative process. You've got to work with other people. I also want to agree with you and credit you with some insight about social media. It's just a cesspool. So much of it. the toughest debate that I've been through is the school choice debate. I've always been a school choice guy. I've been very consistent with that. It was really nasty. I think that's the first time constituency in Lubbock came after me on social media. It was really nasty on my Facebook page. We finally took it down. We never did put it back up. We just don't really need it. Sometimes I like to communicate emergencies or, some instructions from DPS or TxDOT or what have you. But I could do that on Twitter anyway. And we just haven't seen a need for that to bring that Facebook page back because it got so nasty. So much misinformation was being spread on it, and I didn't want to use my platform to spread misinformation and certainly the nastiness. I'm not going to subject myself to that. So we took it down, and we've left it down, and honestly, we just haven't missed it.
All right. What is a piece of legislation or a change that you've helped enact that you are particularly proud of?
Well, certainly the Reese bill, certainly the downtown, the PFZ, the project financing zone that we did for the Civic Center. I'm even proud of, we did a water bill with Charles Perry of cleaning the water that you use for processing the oil, the fracking oil. I didn't curse there. It's called fracking. And so that was another Texas Tech project. And really a lot of the work we did in appropriations. I'm really proud of the work we did for state parks. I am proud of giving teachers a record raise this year. I've actually gotten some thank yous from them. And I'm really thankful for, I have some pet interests. We did some work with the cart industry, the horse and buggy industry in San Antonio. We're working through some of that. So that's, I'm a horse guy. So it's always fun to kind of jump into a passion and maybe help the state out in those areas. I'm proud of the work that we did in redistricting. Really proud of that. We were muzzled. Anything we say can and will be used against us in court. So we were yelled at for hours on that committee, and I think we held our composure. Wow, it goes on and on.
I'm struck by this. That this is your sophomore session.
Yeah, we did it. Yeah, I'm proud that we got Dustin Burrows elected as speaker. I think we've got, for the good of Texas and the options out there, I think we got the best person in the best leadership position to help the state of Texas at this time, at this point in its history.
That, even your second session, there's some real stuff being done. There's some real action being taken.
I'm proud of school choice. Immensely proud of that. Wasn't my bill. That was Brad Buckley. He did a great job with it.
Yeah, that was a slog. That there was a lot of loud voices on both sides of that, and being able to navigate that, staying up there till 4 a.m, day after day after day. I think it is pretty clear that you are getting to make a difference. And I want to wrap up with this question. Looking ahead, what are some of the emerging issues, the loud issues that are forthcoming that the public needs to know about, and what are the next steps on that?
And to roll back real quick, my very first bill was a bill to abolish DEI in the university systems. No one knew what it was 2 years ago or had heard of it. I had run into it a few times, and I was the first legislator in the country in my freshman year. My very first bill was the elimination of DEI in the university system. Now, they gave it to more senior heads, including Brandon Creighton, who's now the chancellor of Texas Tech. But I was proud to really start that conversation, and I did. I was absolutely the one who started it. DeSantis picked up on it in Florida and passed a bill quicker than we did, and then our governor, of course, had to run and get one done here. But I'm really proud of eliminating. We're still trying, by the way. It still pops up here and there. It's really tough to weed out, but we're doing it. The stuff that's coming is, I think, healthcare. The federal government funds the states for a lot of its healthcare. The cost of healthcare is skyrocketing, absolutely skyrocketing. It's becoming something that's just not going to be sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And so I think healthcare is going to be a big deal this next session. I think we still have a little bit of work to do on education and property taxes. I'm still just going to be a bear. The governor's focused on the property taxes now. I'm glad he's adopted some of my issues, Governor Abbott, about capping and some of the other things he wants to do. 2/3 vote to pass bonds and, raise the rates beyond the rollback rate and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to sinking my teeth into some of those issues.
Okay. That's exciting. A lot of that touches business in every single way. I appreciate you being here. How do I send people to you to get in touch with you and or do business with you?
Carl Tepper, 806-470-2354. Everyone has my phone number. I've never had anyone abuse it, really. Don't call me at midnight, okay? But during the day is fine. Donna Corbin is my district director. Just look it up online. I forgot the phone number. It's a 512 area code, but it really hits the office here in Lubbock. I have the best staff of anyone in the state. As a matter of fact, people are trying to poach them from me all the time. They're not going to get them. But Parker and Ariana and Donna do an incredible job, and we intend to keep representing Lubbock like we've been doing with a lot of fun and a lot of zest and zeal. And I would really like to thank everyone for letting us do this. It's been a heck of a ride, and we intend to keep doing it until further notice.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate you having a conversation with me. That was a good time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If you are a business owner and you feel stuck in your business, you feel stuck and you've plateaued and you can't get to the next level, go to our website, stagcoaching.com. In the upper right-hand corner, click to book your free consultation. In your free consultation, we will help give you the next few steps you need to take your business to the next level. It's free and it's on our website, stagcoaching.com. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.